Jerusalema ikhaya lami, ilondoloze uhambe nami, zungangishilana. Jerusalema ikhaya lami, ilondoloze uhambe nami, zungangishilana. Dawo yami ayikholana, buso wami awukholana. Ilondoloze zuhambe nami, dawo yami ayikholana, buso wami awukholana. Ilondoloze
Jerusalema was originally sung by Nohibo in the South African Zulu language, but was seen to resonate amongst millions all over the world. Hello, everybody. Namaste and welcome. I am Sneha Tamatur, and I'm honored to be your host for day one of the YILAGA International Conference. I'm a business analysis specialist and have been a student of Indian classical music for the last 15 years. The dance you just witnessed was the shared experiences of individuals across the globe, from villages, cities, houses, and care homes, all connected by music, movement, and rhythm. What better way to age than to do it together? On this note, we have with us today a respected individual who has truly included and amplified the multidimensional voices of psychology. Please welcome APA President, Mr. Frank C. Worrell.
Good day. My name is Frank C. Worrell, and I'm the 2022 President of the American Psychological Association. I am delighted to extend my greetings to all of you at the opening of the first International Conference on Independent Living and Graceful Aging, YILAGA. The public often associates psychology with treating mental health concerns, and treatment is certainly an important aspect of what psychology does. But as all of you probably know, psychology does much more. Psychologists engage in the prevention of negative outcomes and the promotion of positive outcomes across the lifespan, from early in development to older populations. One of APA's divisions, Division 20, Adult Development and Aging, focuses on growth, development, and challenges during adulthood and old age. And some members of this division may be involved in this conference. I'm also sure that there are many other academic disciplines that are involved in your organization. Nonetheless, your focus on independent living and graceful aging is in keeping with APA's vision of a strong, unified, and diverse psychology that enhances knowledge and improves the human condition. On behalf of APA, I extend our congratulations to YILAGA on its first international conference. I am sure it will be a great success and that there will be many other conferences in the years that follow. Best wishes.
Thank you. Thank you for those kind words of wisdom. We have amongst us a woman who stands as an example of graceful aging in every aspect of her life. She's an anthropologist who currently works for the Learning for Well-Being Foundation with a special interest in intergenerational partnership. She is also the director of Vimukthy International. Please welcome Ms. Shanti George for the welcome address.
I have both the NGO Committee on Aging and the Program on Aging from the UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs in New York. Another global organization represented here is the World Health Organization, represented here by the International Federation on Aging, We also have the American Psychological Association, the Global Peace Foundation, and more locally in the site of the ILAGA initiative in Kerala, we have the Kerala Sociological Society and Center for Gerontological Studies. We also have the Center for Constitutional Rights Research and Advocacy. And then we have the host institution, ILAGA, Yohans Vimukthy International. Who are some of the special speakers and guests representing these organizations? They will be more fully introduced to you when they speak to the conference. Professor Dr. Vikram Dutt plays so many different roles and wears so many different hats across the field of disability and inclusion. Dr. Cynthia Stewin is the main representative to the United Nations on behalf of the International Federation on Aging, as well as the current chair of the NGO Committee on Aging to the United Nations. Dr. Jane M. Barrett is the Secretary General of the International Federation on Aging. Ms. Amal Abu Rafe is the Chief of Program on Aging at the UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs in New York. Dr. Nandakumar is the co-founder of Ashwini, which is the Association for Health Welfare of the Nilgiris, paying special attention to the Adivasi or indigenous populations. Mr. John Dixon is president of the World Trade and Development Group, with particular reference to Okinawa and Afghanistan. Dr. Markande Rai is the senior advisor to the United Nations organization, Habitat. From Korea, we have Dr. Jin Shin, president of the Institute for Peace Affairs, Chungnam National University. We also have Mr. Ye King, senior fellow on Northeast Asia at the Global Peace Foundation. Ms. Miko Green brings over 35 years of international leadership experience and is an advocate for innovation. Dr. Alakananda Banerjee is the founder chairman of the Dharma Foundation of India. The conference organizers and coordinators are Dr. Sal Chaco, who is associated with many of the organizations identified at the beginning of this welcome, the American Psychological Association, the NGO Committee on Aging, the International Federation of Aging, and the Global Peace Foundation, and is the founder of ILAGA. She will be well supported by Chaco Palathisheral, Joel Tom, Sneha Tamatur, all of whom are engineers of various kinds, but they bring not only technological expertise, but strong commitment and very special values. For example, Sneha's commitment to sustainable practice. Let me introduce you to the people who will be introducing you in turn to these speakers in more detail than I have. There are three such people. They have different entry points into the topic of the conference, which are actually complementary entry points. Ms. Anne Thomas is a retired teacher of English and French. The passion that she put into teaching is now invested in social causes, notably women's empowerment, their pay parity, and financial independence, with considerable attention paid to aging populations in low-income and middle-income homes. You will also be guided through today's program by Ms. Ambika Pillai, a clinical psychologist trained in special education with more than 20 years of experience. Notably, she was part of the team that set up their special school in Munnar in the hills of Kerala. As you know, hills are marginal areas. She has trained doctors and teachers for awareness of mental health and disability under a special scheme. Today, you will be guided through the program by Anne and Ambika, who have just been introduced to you. And tomorrow, you will meet Dr. Sarah George, whose entry point into the topics of the conference relates to the point we often hear that vulnerable populations is professor in the St. Gregorio's Dental College in Kothamangalam after a wide-ranging career which included 5 years in Cambodia as the UN designated dentist. I leave you in the able hands of Anne Thomas and Ambika Pillai, and with a final welcome to the conference. Thank you.
Dr. Kate is a pioneer and luminary in the field of chronic care and disease self-management. Her patient disease self-management program has been adopted by many organizations. She has received several awards as well as authored books pertaining to this. She is currently Professor Emeritus at the renowned Stanford University School of Medicine.
Dr. P.B.K. Nair is a pioneer who put gerontology on the Indian academic map. He has contributed significantly in the area of population studies, health and science management, and gerontology. He founded the Center for Gerontological Studies, CGS, in 1983. He was head of the Sociology Department of Kerala University and he worked there for 21 years. Before that, he was head of the Sociology Department of Dibrugarh University, Assam. He worked as consultant for various organizations like UN, FAO, ILO, WHO, and World Bank. The glorious work of CGS was recognized by the Government of India and he was conferred the Vayoshreshta Samman in 2009. He got the Lifetime Achievement Award in 2014. His age-friendly Grama Panchayat project has been implemented in 7 Grama Panchayats of 2 districts of Kerala.
Mrs. Shanta Matthew and her husband have been living in Kochi for the last 30 years. While in Bahrain, she volunteered at the Government Rehabilitation Center for the Mentally Challenged, where she introduced music therapy with the help of the American Women's Association and was recognized by the Ministry of Social Welfare, Bahrain, for her contribution to the center. During her time in Bahrain, she also, along with 3 fellow members of the Indian Ladies Association, started Sneha, a recreational center for mentally challenged children of the expatriate community. After settling in Kochi, Shanta joined as a volunteer at Vimukthi Special School, Kalmasheri, working 3 to 5 days a week. She is now currently the director of Vimukthi Special School. During her 20 years at Vimukthi, Shanta was instrumental in fundraising and expanding the social facilities. She is passionate about maintaining a clean city and works with the local community to keep the environment clean.
Dr. Robin Jacob Marukuri is the chief physician of Marukuri Ayurveda Center since 1995. He is also the director and head of the Department of Yoga. He is the 8th generation in their family to practice Ayurveda. He completed his bachelor's degree from Thrissur and heads 4 centers in Kerala, as well as the Middle East. He has a great passion and vast knowledge in different forms of yoga. In their Ayurveda camps, they have treated guests from over 38 countries. They teach the Ayurvedic concept of living and in-house medicine preparation, and they have an eco-friendly campus.
Thank you, Ms. Shanti George, Dr. Sarah George, Ms. Anne Thomas, and Ms. Ambika Pillai. I take this opportunity to introduce you to Mr. Chaco, the treasurer of YILAGA and one of the directors of Yohans Vimukthy International. He will be introducing our next speaker to us shortly. Mr. Chaco studied engineering and worked in multiple roles applying technology to solve business challenges. Please welcome Mr. Chaco.
Thank you, Sneha. When I was researching Dr. Vikram Dutt's past to prepare to introduce him, it occurred to me that it would be simpler to list the things that he's not tried his hand at in a long and illustrious career. Here's why. He's been awarded Man of the Decade, Man of the Year, and a Family Award, all of these from the United States and Italy. A documentary filmmaker, 4 of his films have been screened at the famous Cannes Film Festival. He's a journalist and educationist, both a sportsman and a coach, an expert on India's University Grants Commission, and he retired as a college principal. Retirement hasn't slowed him down, as he's presently heading a community-based rehabilitation project for the All India Confederation of the Blind. Dr. Vikram Dutt, I invite you to the next session.
Good evening, everybody. It's good evening from India, though I know we have friends from all across the world. So it's a good, healthy evening to wherever you are in whichever part of the world. We are talking about aging. But when we really talk about aging, we are talking about grace. We are talking about the ability to bring forth the experience of many years into a positive way in which we can reach out to people. The problem is that the younger generation thinks the older people are a drag on them. The older generation feels that the youngsters don't care enough about them. This conference will look at many of the technical aspects. I felt as an introduction, let's talk absolutely grassroots what happens to all of us. One of the key points in aging gracefully, and with aging comes a lot of fun because there are a lot of responsibilities that we have put behind us. So we are free to experiment with our own selves. An experiment that I started very early in my life when I was only 18, I'm now 70, so I've practiced it for 52 years, is meditation. We all talk that we hear so much of nonsense every day. A few years ago at a university on World Mental Health Day, I was the principal speaker, and I had just one question to everybody. And I repeat that. It's a statement more than a question. Every morning when we get up, we first refresh ourselves or freshen ourselves for the whole day. The primary purpose of it is to use the washroom and to get rid of all the waste matter within our body. And that refreshes us. We follow it up with a bath. My question to everybody is, it was first to myself, that we hear such a lot of nonsense every day. We see such a lot of stupid, ridiculous things happening around us every day. And we are absorbing it all. Where are we getting rid of all this mental, stupid waste matter? We get rid of the physical waste matter, but the mind is always bogged down with a lot of waste matter. The only way to get rid of that is meditation. Through meditation, we become fresh every morning. Way back in 1976, when I was only 24 years old, I had a very life-threatening spinal injury. And at that point of time, doctors said that I would never walk again. I had a great spinal surgeon, Professor Brahm Prakash, who's no more in this world. He lent me a book to read, and it was called Mind and Matter, It was written by a Professor Wilder Penfield, and he was a great neuroscientist, and he had talked about his experiences with the brain. And he said, in my experiments, I could pinpoint which area of the brain controlled what thought process. But he said, all my experiments have not been able to pinpoint where is the mind. The mind is something metaphysical. The mind is what controls how we age. The bodily process is bound to take place. For that, we'll have to go through geriatric care. Bodily, physical degeneration with the age is one aspect, but it is the mind over matter. The pandemic has shown that those in good and fine mental health have not only prevailed over the pandemic, but have moved ahead in learning new skills, in doing a lot of things which bring them pleasure around the house. I was asked once that since I deal a lot with blind people and with people who are called disabled, so I actually call them people with disabilities, how do they age? In a discussion, I had shared that one of the principal problems of aging is that we have to start looking for assistance in a lot of physical things that we do. When I, for instance, am a person with a spinal disability, I learned very early to reach out for help. So reaching out for help becomes very natural. And when along with reaching out for help, you practice meditation, you not only age gracefully, but you age in a very fun-filled way. Most of my friends are college students and ex-students who all say that, sir, it's great fun because we never realize we're with an older person. So my only one mantra, as an Indian, we always believe in mantras. My mantra is mind control, meditation, good mental health, think well, and I will not talk about eat well, eat healthy, do this. Those are all platitudes. And there's only one thing that helps us age, and that is good mental health brought about through meditation. I'll be listening to the other speakers with great intent to see what all other mantras they have for aging gracefully. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vikram Dutt. Your experiences and perspectives on graceful aging are rich in takeaways. The Sustainable Development Goals, also known as the Global Goals, seek to reconcile economic growth, environmental balance, and social progress, ensuring that all people have the same opportunities and can live a better life without compromising on the planet. At ILAGA, the focus on SDG Goal 3, good health and well-being, and SDG Goal 4, quality education, has been the focus of consideration. Let us now hear from a panel of speakers whose research has impacted and can be felt across the globe. Population Aging, Agenda 2030, Our Common Agenda, by Ms. Amal Abu Rafe, Chief of Program on Aging at the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs. Decade of Healthy Aging Opportunities for NGO Community by Dr. Jane Bharat, Secretary General of International Federation on Aging, IFA. Work Advocacy of NGO Committee on Aging, New York, by Dr. Cynthia Stewin, Chair, NGO Committee on Aging, New York, and UN Main Representative, International Federation on Aging. Please welcome Ms. Amal Abu Rafe, Dr. Jane Bharat, and Dr. Cynthia Stewin.
Thank you so much, Sneha. Thank you everyone for the kind invitation. It's a treat to join you today, and good morning from New York City. If there's one thing that we all have in common around the world, it's that we are all aging. There are three ways to describe global aging. First, it's unprecedented. Without parallel in human history, the number of persons aged 60 years and over is projected to accelerate in the coming decades. The second is that it is pervasive. The growth in number of older persons is a global phenomenon. So while countries are at very different stages of the process, nevertheless, virtually every country will experience a substantial increase in the size of its older population between today and 2050. And the third is that global population aging is enduring. So globally, the number of older persons is growing faster than the numbers of people of any other age group. And in 8 years, by 2030, older people will globally outnumber youth. And this increase will be the greatest and the most rapid in low and middle income countries. So by 2050, the number of older persons is projected to more than double, where 1 in 6 people around the world will be older persons. In India, our projections, which will be updated later this year, show that the number of older people will also double by 2050. And today, older Indians make up 10% of the population. But in our work, we steer away from percentages. We talk about total numbers because each number is a human being. And that small, what looks at first glance is a small 10%, actually amounts to almost 150 million older persons in India. So what's the takeaway message? All societies in the world are in the midst of this longevity revolution. Some are at its early stages and some are more advanced, but all will pass through this extraordinary transition. However, we see here in New York at the UN that many countries, specifically in Asia, in Africa, they remain blinded by all things youth, although these regions are expected to witness the largest relevant increase in the number of older persons, some by 230% by 2050. So how does this global population aging affect development? In our view, it involves 2 main challenges. Not that global aging is a challenge, but rather the need to challenge 2 status quos. The first challenge is the inadequate acknowledgement of diversity of older persons. I ask you to imagine an older person in your mind, and I bet you that each one of us will have a different vision of who that older person is. Harnessing population aging for social and economic progress requires that assumptions and stereotypes regarding old age be challenged. Central to this acknowledgement is that diversity is a defining characteristic of old age and the consequent reflection of this heterogeneity in public policies. We observe heterogeneity among older persons in their needs, their capacities, their preferences, their living arrangements, as well as their health and economic status. What does this mean to policies? It means that a successful response to population aging and longevity needs to be a multifaceted one. The second challenge is the lack of incorporation of a life course approach. Policies on aging deserve close examination from the developmental perspective of a broader life course and a society-wide view. For example, it's important to recognize the situations in which inequalities widen across the life course. Disadvantages experienced by different social groups, such as women, persons with disabilities, migrants, ethnic minorities, are often amplified at older ages. I have a few points to make on Agenda 2030, and Sneha mentioned the Global Development Goals. Each year, member states in New York voluntarily report their implementation of those goals, a select number each year. These reports are a tool for accountability. They help strengthen national ownership of the Sustainable Development Goals, promote inclusiveness and participation, as well as more effective implementation of the 2030 Development Agenda. Our team analyzed all the reports submitted so far, 248 reports from 2016 to 2021. And we saw that over 2/3 of member states included reference to aging. However, when you take a closer look in these reports, older persons were predominantly addressed as a vulnerable group. They often were portrayed aging-related issues as a challenge, including by focusing on concerns over the sustainability of social services, pensions, and healthcare systems, and as a factor that limits long-term economic and income growth. So last year, the Secretary General launched his vision of the world as he sees it in the next 5 years in a report called Our Common Agenda. And if you take a look at that report, you'll see that it's heavily skewed towards a more youthful perspective of what this new social contract will be and how the priorities focus around age groups. And some member states in New York have already flagged this concern to the United Nations Secretary General. The older persons have to be part and parcel of this exercise. There are 2 upcoming exercises that will take place at the United Nations that we call upon all advocates to engage in. The first is that the United Nations will be preparing a roadmap, a system-wide plan that is people-centered and that will take into account diversity, age, and gender. And this is a great opportunity to incorporate older persons, their preferences, and their needs. And the second is that the UN and member states are looking into the possibility of holding a World Social Summit in 2025. And that will also be another opportunity to raise awareness and incorporate aging-related issues and issues of importance to older persons. And finally, there is one element that is currently underway in New York, which is the discussion by governments of whether or not there is a need for an international legal instrument. Such a legal instrument would set international standards around the world for governments to look up to and to seek as a baseline for the services and policies and legislation that they offer older persons. And we ask everyone to also engage actively in those. I will not touch upon the decades because my colleague Jane Barrett will go over that in more details. Thank you for your attention.
Good morning. My name is Jane Barrett and I'm calling in from Toronto, Canada, and it's a great pleasure to be with you today. Congratulations to the organisers and all those that come together today for this first YILAGA International Conference. My brief today is to talk with you a little bit about the UN Decade of Healthy Ageing and how civil societies, people like you and me and organisations that we represent can actually work to drive the agenda of the Decade of Healthy Ageing. So first and foremost, it really comes on the back of my friend and colleague Amal's presentation. You know, older people are not a homogeneous group. We're all so very different. And across your great nation, you know, the importance of social determinants of health underpinning the health and well-being and quality of life of older people must always be at the forefront of effective policy making and practice. And so as we think about positive, active ageing, we almost put that lens of inequities and the social determinants through everything that we talk about and live. Next, please. Can we move the slides forward? Thank you. At the heart of, you know, the UN Decade of Healthy Ageing is, what is healthy ageing really? And I like to really, you know, revisit this definition time and time again because it tells us something quite different about the previous definition that talked to us about the absence of disease. You know, healthy ageing is a process. It's a process of developing and maintaining the functional ability that enables well-being into older age. And it's this process across the life course, but it's our own ability to maintain and improve our function within the environment in which we live. Next, please. Thank you. You know, all of our work and all of your thinking around the decade is really framed across history. And we go back, right back, and probably before, to 1982, the UN Vienna International Plan of Aging, And I know in your region, there has been consultations around the Madrid International Plan of Action. And as part of that consultation, we're really revisiting the progress that not only governments have made, but also civil society. And so, we don't come into the decade without lots of information. We actually come in with a number of different plans, agendas to hook our carriage on to drive change. Next, please. It's also important to share with you some pivotal agendas and plans that the IFA actually acknowledges in all of our work. And one of them is, as I said, the Madrid International Plan of Action on Aging, and the 3 priority areas. And that really is aligned with the principles and actions and agendas of the United Nations Decade of Healthy Aging. Now, where has this come from? Back in 2015, the WHO delivered the first evidence-based report on aging and health. And of course, we also, pull through this, the general work program of the WHO, where there's 3 priority areas. We also, at the IFA, put in context, oncoming reports such as, the Global Report on Ageism and the Immunisation Agenda 2030. And I do want to acknowledge, as we sit here, some of us in our homes and some of us face to face, the brutal nature of the pandemic that we have all lived in, but those that have not been able to survive the pandemic, and some of those that will be living with certainly functional impairments. It's sometimes, odd, isn't it? When we're almost through some series of global unprecedented change, we almost think that it's gone, but it's very much present with us. And I know that the cases in India have dramatically reduced, but we live with it and understanding how to shape our healthy agenda within that. Next, please. I want to touch on, what it is, the relationship between a person and their environment. In the decade, we are talking about how do we create an environment that enables an older person to do what they have reason to value. And Amal talked about dignity and respect and protecting the rights of older people. Some of the other environmental impacts will be the complexity of our healthcare systems, the physical environment, the community resources. And of course, ageism is part of, the political and social frame of reference that we need to really combat to break through and ensure that the environment for people of all ages, but particularly those, in the older age group, have reason to value. And that then touches on, economic and social protection, as well as access to health systems, but also this whole area of digital literacy that is very confronting to those that don't have access to the internet. Next, please. I want to touch on also the fact that we do talk about a life course approach to aging, but that's emblematic of the life course approach to health. And across, our life, there'll be various instances that impact the health and well-being of our person, but those that we live with. And in that environment, we also need to touch on the familial caring roles that each of us may have, and the communities in which we live, because it's the communities that actually help us ensure that this environment is accessible to all. Next, please. But in the latter part of our life, we also take into consideration that there are generally 3 different trajectories of an older person's life, and they all relate to function, don't they? We have those people that will have a high stable capacity, and that will gradually diminish, but overall, they will be in that phase of dying peacefully and with dignity. And then we have that other group of older people that have a declining capacity. And then The third trajectory is where there's a significant and dramatic loss of capacity. Now, in every trajectory, and these are not exclusive, they overlap, in every single trajectory, we have a responsibility to look at the environment and look at the opportunities where we can break down the barriers, whether it's being in our social system, our economic system, our health system, but also the community, and as we've already heard, the intergenerational community. Next, please. So the UN Decade of Healthy Aging was launched in September 2021. I almost forgot what year it was, 2021. And it was a very proud and auspicious moment because it was through the diligent, systematic and comprehensive consultation and discussions between the World Health Organization and the United Nations that we now have the UN Decade of Healthy Aging. And why do we need this? We need it because it is a point in time across the next 10 years and beyond where we have global collaboration across sectors and across disciplines. And that's where civil society has a unique and powerful role to play, to be a voice, to inform, to collaborate, to reach across the aisles. We have a responsibility to reach across the aisles to academia, to government, to industry, to understand a common agenda. Next, please. And in the Decade of Healthy Aging, there are 4 main action areas. Integrated care, primary integrated care. You know, how do we actually ensure the simplified pathways through our primary care system? And how can we integrate so that an older person, but people of all ages, can actually seamlessly access services that will improve their health and well-being? Long-term care. One of the indicators is long-term care, good long-term care in every single country of the world. Thirdly, age-friendly environments, and that word has already been mentioned already. But what is it? It is this environment for all ages, but it's one that enables us to maximize our functional ability, which then will prompt us to be able to contribute to society. And finally, combating ageism. It is the insidious nature of ageism that actually prevents us from being who we are as an older person. And that's not only self-identifying ageism, it's interpersonal ageism and it's institutional ageism. So there's the 4 action areas. But what can we do? We have 4 enablers. Next slide, please. And those 4 enablers, I believe, is where civil society can really inform and drive change, using our voice and engagement. And this very conference is about engagement. It's also about leadership and capacity building. It's sharing resources unconditionally across sectors and disciplines. It's putting your hand forward and contributing to another person or organization's agenda. Thirdly, connecting stakeholders. And it's not only connecting of the like, it's connecting unlike together. Bring unlike together to learn from one another with the focal point of improving the health of well-being of older people. And finally, strengthening research, data and innovation. And just on that point, I do want to make the point. The Chief Statistician for UN Women, Papa Sek, just in a webinar this week said it's very rare that data is collected on women older than 49. This must change. Next, please. What can we do also? Not only can we be one of those enabling drivers, so leadership, voice and engagement, connecting stakeholders, and also measuring, but we can right now, right this day, we can actually join the decade. So I've put the link up there. Anyone, any organisation can sign up to the decade. And on that decade platform, you will also see a portal around civil society organisation mapping and engagement. The IFA, together with several other organisations, are mapping civil society organisations so that you can be invited to a colloquium to share agendas and initiatives so that we can be a driving force in the decade. Next, please. So this is what we're all about. Join with IFA and other organisations around the world to establish a civil society alliance, not dissimilar to the NCD alliance, so that we can be one of those driving forces that supports, delivers and helps us be accountable, but also all those in the global collaboration. Next, please. I think it's fitting that we return quietly to the leadership of the UN Secretary General. Across the last 2 years, the UN Secretary General has been at the forefront of many powerful conversations around the pandemic. He has challenged us all, but he has challenged us with hope, with integrity, with humility, with compassion. And this is a statement from the UN Secretary General, early in 2021. And let me repeat his words, but not so eloquently. The potential of older persons is a powerful base for sustainable development. More than ever, we must listen to their voices, suggestions, and ideas to build more inclusive and age-friendly societies. I thank you for the opportunity to be with you today and to be part of this important panel with friends and colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you. I add my congratulations for this wonderful ILAGA conference and bringing us all together. Next slide, please. I'm here to tell you just a little bit about the fact that aging hasn't always been at the top of the priorities at the United Nations, and it really began in about the 1970s. Recognizing the UN was established in 1945, however, the population aging was much smaller then, life expectancy was much less then. But I have to give credit to a champion for aging issues at the UN back then, was Ambassador Julia T. Alvarez from the Dominican Republic. And she became known fondly as the Ambassador on Aging. And I like to credit her with really educating UN member states and the UN system about taking note of aging. It was actually in the late 1970s when the 3 NGO committees on aging were established. Here in New York at the UN, 1 in Geneva, and 1 in Vienna. And our overall involvement of the NGO community is to provide our expertise and our perspective to the UN community. And as has already been mentioned, there was the first World Assembly on Aging in 1982. In 2002, but the World Assembly in 2002 adopted the Madrid International Plan of Action on Aging. And I would say that building from the First World Assembly in 1982 to 2002 is when a lot of that work really went on. And as mentioned earlier by both speakers, the MIPA, the Madrid International Plan of Action, was created. And as you heard, every 5 years, voluntary reviews are presented to member states. However, there's nothing mandatory about their following the principles identified in MIPA, which cover independence, participation, care, self-fulfillment, and dignity. Next slide, please. The NGO Committee on Aging, our tagline, Building a Society for All Ages, actually comes out of the 1999 International Year of Older Persons. Building a Society for All Ages. I think we're always in this process. But in that year, the then Secretary General Kofi Annan stated, and I quote, "We live in an age to which many labels have been attached. It is the post-Cold War age, the post-industrial age, the age of the internet, the age of globalization," and he added, "the day of longevity." The overall mission of our NGO Committee on Aging in New York is really to raise the awareness of opportunities and challenges, but I emphasize the opportunities of an aging society, and to advocate within the UN system to integrate aging. Now, great strides have certainly been made since the 1970s, thanks in great part to the Program on Aging unit of DESA, which Amal Abu Rafi leads. And certainly, as you heard from Jane, the WHO in adoption of the Decade of Healthy Aging in some of its seminal reports, such as on ageism. We encourage member states to include older adults in all aspects of work and to see us as a resource, not a drain on the resources. Too often, I feel, older persons are seen as just beneficiaries of service and not as rights holders. Too often, societies and members of society take a paternalistic view of older persons, that we need to be cared for. Not that some do not need care, but we are not seen as contributing members of society. So much advocacy work was done in preparation for those Sustainable Development Goals, which were adopted in 2015, such as inclusion of the recognition of health, which must have a life course approach, as you heard, and education and lifelong learning. And I know YILAGA is creating incredible programs addressing these two important goals, and the fifth being on gender equality of women. Gender equality, of which I say recognition of older women is long overdue, because they are an age group especially vulnerable to lifelong inequalities. Hence, recognizing older persons as valuable resources in the community for economic and social prosperity. It's very important that we call on all member states and remind them that this is an important aspect. Next slide, please. Our specific goals, we do them in 2-year cycles for the NGO Committee on Aging, but I want to take you back just a moment because it was alluded to earlier by Amal. Back in 1948, the UN adopted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, but it did not specifically mention older persons. Since then, there have been many other adoptions of conventions that are legal. Now, a convention is a legally binding document, such as the Convention on the Rights of the Child, or very recently, the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. So it was time that older persons be really recognized within a human rights community. So in 2010, member states voted to establish the Open-Ended Working Group on Aging, that's the OEWG, with the purpose of strengthening the protection of the human rights of older persons. So just last week, we concluded the 12th meeting of the OEWG, and what we came to the conclusion, member states, many spoke eloquently, we have enough data, we've done enough research, we have already documented the gaps that are there, and certainly the horrific violations of human rights that has occurred during the COVID pandemic. If you just think about I know Amal doesn't like percentages, but the percentage of older persons who died during COVID versus younger age groups in comparison to their percentage of their population, it's atrocious. due to lack of equal access to treatment, vaccines. So it really is an opportunity for us to raise the awareness. I'm encouraged by last week's conclusion of the open-ended working group, where there was a strong agreement by many, many member states to move forward with establishment of a core group that will look at the gaps and to determine what types of corrective actions will need to be taken on an intersessional basis before they reconvene next year. Our goal too is very important, is to strengthen and continue our work with global alliances. For example, during the preparation of the Sustainable Development Goals, we actually established a stakeholder group on aging, which now has status within the UN as one of the major groups. So we can speak with a more unified voice, but we did it collaboratively. So we work very closely and increasingly with the disability community, with the women's group, the Sustainable Development major group, etc. It has to be collaborative. We can no longer function in silos. The other important global alliance for the rights of older people was established to really look at aging with rights, and I commend you to their website and joining to really find the tools in which to educate yourself and those around you, as well as our own NGO website, about why and how the importance of establishing the legally binding protection of human rights of older persons. Certainly we engage our membership, just as we've done with Dr. Sally Jaco and ILAGA, and our participation here today is representative of that. And lastly, we use our programs, which are virtual periodic monthly programs, as well as the various side events that we collaborate on and at the UN, but also with our newsletter and social media to promote our work. Next slide, please. Just to give you a, next slide. Yeah, there we are, thank you. Just some things coming up in the future. The UN did establish World Elder Abuse Awareness Day that is observed every June 15th. And there are continuing data coming out about the increase in violence, abuse, and neglect against older persons, particularly during this pandemic. Unfortunately, it's oftentimes a taboo topic, one of embarrassment and shamefulness for older persons to come forward with. But we work together with UN DESA and with the International Network on the Prevention of Elder Abuse to host an observance on this day. My goal is that we one day no longer need such a day because we have eradicated that. The High-Level Political Forum, that's the body established by the UN to monitor the progress on the SDGs. I have to say progress has been slowed because of the pandemic, but we still need to keep everyone's feet to the fire to ensure that older persons are included. The overall theme of the Sustainable Development Goals is to leave no one behind. We must make sure that occurs. So I've already mentioned the stakeholder group on aging involvement, the Global Alliance on Rights of Older Persons. Of course, the UN, back in 1990, did establish the UN International Day of Older Persons, held every year, October 1. Sometimes because of how it falls, it might be the day or two after, before. But anyway, the theme this year, and we collaborate with the NGO committees on aging in Vienna and Geneva with our New York program, is on older women, as well as climate change and all the disasters, which of course we're seeing played out so vividly in what's happening with older people in Ukraine. So anyway, that's just to give you kind of a highlight of what we're working on. I invite you to join us, and each one of us can make a difference. Let's celebrate our world's longevity. Thank you.
Dr. Sal Chacko is an advocate for differently abled and aging populations. She has worked extensively as a clinical service specialist for mental health. She has over 30 years of research in gerontology and psychology, which led to her hypothesis on ILAGA. Despite having trotted the globe and spending time with a plethora of individuals, she concluded that the real essence of a happy life is just being here and now. ILAGA, therefore, became a reflection of her multitude experiences, educational and professional influences. She developed a consolidated and wholesome curriculum for the differently abled and aging populations based on her academic credentials and licenses. Through her curriculum, she highlights the intricate relationships between the mind and body using customizable tools and methods of therapies. She emphasizes on the delicate balance that needs to be acknowledged between the digitization and just being human. At ILAGA, the core belief lies in the acceptance of death and dying, grief and loss, informed consent, to respect the elderly, and advanced directives towards healthy aging. Without any further ado, please let me welcome Dr. Sal Chacko, founder and president of ILAGA.
Good morning. On behalf of Yohans Vimukthy International, I wish to welcome all of you from the global community to the ILAGA Conference for Independent Living and Graceful Aging. This is an initiative to educate and prepare communities to cope with growing aging populations. It is our aim through this publication and social media campaigns to raise awareness first amongst aging populations and caregivers to differently abled adults. Second, amongst governments, decision makers and healthcare workers from social service settings. More specifically, it provides a host of case studies to show the evidence-based program ILAGA has to offer with its curriculum. a curriculum organized to improve health and well-being along with an educational component. This curriculum can be used in all geriatric homes, special schools, and vocational rehabilitation centers. Even though this curriculum is targeted for the aged and differently abled populations, it is also can be used by everyone. With rapidly aging populations in several parts of the world, there is an urgent need to prepare communities to cope with this phenomenon. If this is left unchecked and unmanaged, providing care for the aged will be substandard and ineffective, leading to both the aging populations and their caregivers being overwhelmed with dire consequences. While governments and NGOs are stepping in and stepping up to address these all-important, all-encompassing issue, the questions that remain unanswered are these effective enough to support regions with growing elder communities amidst a diminishing general population's growth? Are these sufficient metrics to measure the effectiveness and outcomes of aging-related and allied policies? The current models are to provide care and support for aging populations in dedicated facilities such as senior homes and long-term care facilities. How will this model scale up to meet rapidly increasing demand? While there is certainly a focus on addressing the issue at all levels of governance, international, country, state, and local, there is an additional need for a ground-up effort at a community level to focus on meeting this challenge. A program would need to be established to provide a common platform for people living in communities to participate in the caregiving of elders. Such a program would need to be easy to adopt and implement. While the main aspect of the platform would be the core matter of caregiving to the elderly, additional aspects need to be included to make the platform well-rounded and comprehensive. Additional aspects such as urban design increments to support aging, adopting technology to improve the quality of life for elders and their caregivers, and incorporating non-traditional holistic healing during aging. The platform includes guidance on how the maze of regulations unique to the regions of the world can be navigated to reduce anxiety during the late stages of life. YILAGA was founded with the purpose of managing the aging process in communities with the additional focus on the aging of differently abled populations. YILAGA produced its comprehensive Train the Trainer program, which incorporated strategies from geriatric care management, disease self-management, and counseling psychology to compile a comprehensive program to better manage aging. The YILAGA curriculum was framed using 3 disciplines. Geriatric care management offered its mental status exams as the basis for intake assessments from Geriatric Consortium on Aging. The chronic disease self-management program being offered by Stanford University's Disease and Prevention, and now it is offered at SMRC, provides action planning, goal setting and brainstorming techniques and counseling psychology theories and practice which are central to the curriculum. Complementing a clinical approach to self-reliance and self-management, the aging process is the realm of music, dance, and yoga therapy. The physical benefits of performing asanas and the mental stability of meditation offered by yoga have proven beneficial to participants of the program. Group music and dance participation fosters social bonds working together as a cohesive unit. Additionally, dance provides a level of physical suppleness and coordination so important. In summary, YILAGA's program is one that will provide to be useful in the years to come to better enable communities to cope with the needs of a rapid aging population. I urge you to evaluate and consider incorporating this program in academic curriculum, public health policy, and in communities where this issue is recognized. The end goal is for trainers to understand the concept of being in the present moment through all this. The ultimate aim is to reach the optimum level of happiness and the ability to provide love unconditionally. All of these practices better prepares one for the end of life by approaching that event completely at peace with oneself. When individuals reach a higher level of happiness, it leads to community well-being and global peace. Thank you.
I take this opportunity to introduce to you Dr. Varkey Palathucheral, who will be introducing the next speaker to us. Dr. Varkey Palathucheral is a treasurer of YILAGA and one of the directors of Yohans Vimukthy International. Dr. Varkey Palathucheral is a professor and dean at the American University of Sharjah. He is a graduate of the Indian Institute of Kharagpur and Ohio State University. He has worked as an associate professor at the University of Illinois for 15 years, and for the past 12 years, he has been working at the American University of Sharjah, of which the previous 6 years he worked as the Dean of the College of Architecture, Art and Design. Please welcome Dr. Varkey Palathucheral.
Thank you, Sneha, for that introduction. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Nandakumar Menon. As Shanti mentioned at the top of this program, Dr. Nandakumar is the co-founder of Ashwini, which is the Association for Health Welfare of the Nilgiris. He's also director of the Gudalur Adivasi Hospital in the Nilgiris. Dr. Nandakumar established Ashwini in 1990, and the outcome of that has been a very successful, community-owned, accessible, effective, and sustainable health system. And in turn, Ashwini has set up an Institute of Health for training tribal youth, as well as a school of nursing. Dr. Nandakumar completed his MBBS from the Christian Medical College in Vellore, and he is a fellow of the American College of Surgeons. He has numerous publications in national and international journals and is a recipient of multiple awards. 2 of these include the Humanitarian Award in 2018 from the American College of Surgeons and the Champions Award in 2016 from the India Surgical Forum of the Lancet Commission on Global Surgery. He is an expert member of the steering committee of the National Health Mission, which has been established by the Indian Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. What an impressive and inspiring profile. Over to you, Dr. Nandakumar.
Thank you. First slide, please. So I'd like to make a brief comment about the tribals in our area. As you know, the tribals in India form a huge population, almost 8% of the population, close to 3 times the population of the United Kingdom. Our tribals in the Gudalur Valley have been different in many respects from the tribals elsewhere in the country, in that they have been displaced from their forests and are now a marginalized group living mostly as laborers on the tea estates. The government has large sanctuaries here where tribals have been displaced from. And there are large tea estates which have also converted a huge amount of the forest. Next slide, please. Next, please. As a result of the displacement, their health situation was very, very poor in the early days of this displacement. And in 1990, we started the work, and it was quite a very sorry state of affairs. But over the years, the 20,000 tribals have had access to Ashwini's three-tier health system, of which consists of village health workers, area public health nurses, and a 50-bed, well-equipped secondary care hospital with a center for differently abled, and as well as a large mental health community initiative. The result of the health intervention has been that a larger number of the tribals are now surviving and are becoming elderly. The commonest causes of death, the top 4 causes of death among the tribals today in our population are strokes, cardiovascular disease, cancer, and suicide. Next slide, please. As a result of aging and the change, the complete change in the way of living, from a community kind of living to one of being basically laborers on tea estates and formation of nuclear families, there's been a breakdown of the whole community structure. The tribal elders who had a great command and who had great understanding of the forests have now been displaced and are quite at a loss in the non-tribal, non-forest areas. And so there's a lack of leadership in this community. With all these things happening, the multiple problems that they're facing with poor education, with the whole of their culture being marginalized, and with the fact that the elderly have lost the ability to earn, and with the absence of an economic safety net, there's also been a massive change in the way of the behavior of the people themselves. In that in the olden days they had the community to take care of the older people, but now it's up to the nuclear family, and it's a highly variable treatment by their children. And there have been increasing cases of neglect and indifference, resulting in undernutrition and emotional stress among the elderly. The migration of youngsters from the community also has led to fewer caregivers. And as I mentioned, the nuclear family formation has decreased community support. Next slide, please. With all these multiple problems, the possible ways that we were figuring and as to address these issues would be, one is to establish more community nutrition programs to ensure that the elderly had at least 2 good meals a day. To train more tribal youngsters as caregivers by starting a training program. And I think here, much of what Sally just mentioned in her talk about training the trainers and starting training programs, I think is critical, because a lot needs to be done to train people to look after the elderly, so that, as mentioned earlier, to increase their functional ability to, and also to contribute towards the society they're living in, to encourage them to be a part of the society as being people who are able to contribute is very important. And I think training tribal youngsters as caregivers and motivators in this fashion would be a very important part of the intervention. And this could definitely be taken up by the Ashwini Institute of Health, which we are running an auxiliary nurse midwife program. We also need to look at the earning potential of the older people. While they are quite incapable of performing hard physical labor, they can be trained to do simpler vocational kind of like bag making and so on, so that there's some income which they can generate on their own with village-based vocational training interventions. With some of these possible solutions, we need to look at the problem of aging as an increasing problem, and that greater attention be paid so that the elderly have a peaceful and happier last days of their life. Next slide. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nandakumar. The silent revolution of the increased aging of the population worldwide is bringing fundamental issues to the forefront. One of them is to question the role of the elders in society today. Knowing the state of the world is calling for urgent measures and interventions to humanize development, to empower civil society, and to guarantee peace, security in all corners of the world. I call upon Dr. Sarah George, Ms. Anne Thomas, and Ms. Ambika Pillai to introduce to us the next panel of speakers from Global Peace Foundation.
Mr. John Dixon is President of the World Trade and Development Group and founder of World Trade Centers in Okinawa and Afghanistan. Mr. Dixon is the founding chairman of the World Trade Centers Association's Committee on Peace and Stability Through Trade, highlighting contributions of the private sector to peace. He is a founder and executive council member for the Native American Leadership Alliance, serves on the International Council of Business Beyond Borders, chairs the board of the China Society based in Washington, D.C., and directs the Global Peace Business Council and the Office of Government Relations for the Global Peace Foundation.
Dr. Markandeya Rai is the Senior Advisor of the United Nations Human Settlement Program, UN Habitat. Dr. Rai is also chairperson of the Joint Advisory Committee, which advises UN offices at Nairobi on administrative issues. He has served UN Habitat in various roles for 17 years and was elected President of the Nairobi Staff Union 2000 to 2003. In January of 2006, he was the recipient of the Hind Ratan Award. Dr. Rai has served on the board of academic, cultural, and social bodies in different countries. In 2009, he addressed EU Presidency Seminar at the Swedish Parliament in Stockholm and Global Parliamentarians on Habitat Conference in Washington. Dr. Rai is a member of GPFS Global Leadership Council.
Ms. Fumiko Green of Global Peace Foundation, Japan, has over 35 years of international leadership experience in manufacturing, ERP, and IT businesses. She became an advocate for social innovation with focus on repurposing and technology integration. She has been keenly interested in intergenerational, experiential cultural learning and creating opportunities of knowledge, sharing about sustainability as a tool to connect Japanese youth with the older generation in Japan. At the end of 2019, after over 45 years in USA, Ms. Green, along with her husband, relocated to her native Japan to focus on STEAM education for youth. One of the projects she has begun since she traveled between Japan and USA since 2012 for the development of experiential learning programs is Kimono Recycle. She has established vintage kimono collection storage area in her hometown by working with a vintage kimono store owner and a kimono quarter dress designer to promote the recycling of exceptional handmade silk kimono since January 2020. She believes in the positive influence of the Japanese culture of harmony and wisdom sharing. In today's conflict-driven world, she is also engaged in student global programs, both in the USA and Japan, introducing both Japanese and American students to communities in Japan and USA.
Dr. Jin Shin is the president of the Institute of Peace Affairs, chairman of the Department of Political Science and Diplomacy, and director of the National Strategy Institute, Chungnam National University. Dr. Shin Jin has spent more than 20 years as a researcher and educator with his aspiration to contribute to peaceful reunification of South Korea and North Korea. He has been given a number of awards, including the Fulbright Scholarship and Research Award from the Ministry of Unification. He has served as a visiting scholar at Columbia University and Johns Hopkins University. His published works mainly focus on North Korea's international relations, which is related to the reunification of the Korean Peninsula. In preparation for reunification, the Korean Ministry of Unification asked the Institute for Peace Affairs, its most important partner, to co-build education programs about a reunification for all educators in Korea.
Dr. Yaking Lee is a senior fellow on Northeast Asia at the Global Peace Foundation. He directs the Office of Strategic Partnership and Coordination on International and Advisory Council for Regional and Global Peace and Development. He is also the founding president of the China Society, former non-resident senior fellow of the Center for China and Globalization, former consultant at the International Finance Corporation of the World Bank Group, co-founder and president of the Global Young Leaders Academy. He earned his BA in Sociology from Peking University and MBA from Georgetown University.
Thank you very much for the invitation to this remarkable conference and international forum. I had the opportunity to meet Dr. Sally in Atlanta at a Global Peace Convention 10 years ago. And since that time, she had moved back to India. And I mean, we couldn't forget her. My wife and I spent a lot of time. We had quite an adventure in Atlanta then. And then she called several weeks ago and explained about this international conference she was organizing. It was a huge vision. And I've never seen somebody start with this kind of global first step. And I really want to congratulate her, and her team is fantastic. And we appreciate being invited today to this forum. We don't use the Global Peace Foundation usually deals with countering violent extremism and cross-community problems and conflict, but this aging issue is a very universal one, of course, and it's one that affects all of us, especially me lately. As my beard grows white, and I'm now this very important topic is really very personal for me. I'm in the United States, and a global conference is very hard because the cultures are so different. And in the United States, as some people mentioned earlier, we celebrate youth and kind of don't even think about or talk about elders here so much. But I've also worked the last 20 years with the Native American population or the American Indian population. And so I would like to call on first today Ms. Fumiko Green, a good friend and a person who believes in radical collaboration across all sectors. Fumiko.
Thank you. Thank you for the great opportunity to hear. Focus on aging is quite interesting. As you know, Japan is the most aged nation in terms of percentage of population, 65 and older. We already are at almost 30%, and 1 in 3. In 2030 or something, the statistics says we will have literally over 65 and older will be 1 in 3, while population is going down from 126 million to 85 million by 2065. That means so much of the population will be senior community. And I myself have moved back to Japan to be with my aging parents, age 93 and 85. One other thing I have discovered is the rural communities where my parents are, still close social network exists, and greatest generation, what I call the people who have experienced World War II and are still living. There are fewer and fewer people, but they have so much wisdom and such a resilient attitude toward life. And last 2 years, and I was in the United States for 10 months, but what I have discovered is an active lifestyle that some of the senior community have, either with a physical activity, with the group. There are a couple games that I see, gate bowls and ground golf. I don't know, some of you may not have heard of it, but they're a group of people who are dedicated their daily life to play games, have fun. And also, I discovered the active community of senior university. I discovered that through my mother going through senior university graduate school that she just secretly went. But it's a lifelong learning opportunity once a month and so forth. After 4 years of going to school, once a month, I believe, in community center, they continue to meet and learn. And that's quite remarkable. And another thing I discovered in the Japanese rural community, or sometimes in the city, senior communities memberships are very active in community engagement. A little thing like a cleaning up or weeding. In fact, my mother is known as a weeding lady. She weeds shrines and public parks and so forth. So it's quite interesting to see active lifestyle of Japanese people. So it's interesting to mix that active senior community with, John mentioned radical integration. One of the things I've done with bringing American students to senior community center in my hometown and mingle them. One example is weekly gathering of 100-year-old exercise. It's an exercise group. Once a week they gather. And I brought college students aged 19 to 20 to join them without the language, ability to communicate, because none of the senior could speak English. But what was interesting was having them experience the exercise session together and have tea afterwards has such an impact in couple ways, in both directions. One, senior communities who never have experienced mingling with other youngsters from other nations literally enjoyed sitting and doing some exercise together. And for the young American students, they realize their physical fitness is sometimes worse than the seniors that are regularly doing the exercise. That was kind of interesting. Some of that exercise with the leg lifting and so forth, some students couldn't do it. And while older people, like 80 and up, are doing it without any difficulty. So that was interesting. So there's a lot of challenge in Japan, but I found some of the senior community lifestyle here, there's a lot to be learned by other nations coming up to many older community rising. But another concern area is previous speaker talked about declining of the extended family lifestyle to nuclear family. So there are a lot of loneliness around seniors who are living alone. When you look at the statistics, average household size is less than 2.5. And many seniors are living alone. In an urban area, sometimes it is called loneliness. And sometimes seniors die alone without being noticed for weeks and so forth. So there are a lot of challenges, but in a way that I see senior community in rural area has a closer link with their peers. Somehow, if we can actually integrate some of the close-knit group to interact with some other groups, such as students and so forth, there's a lot more improvement we can make. And one example of the activities that we are experimenting is a physical fitness with what we call yo-yo ball. It is just like a beanbag connected with rubber bands. And it was originally created for therapeutic purposes. But this one gentleman, former policeman, started to use that as a dancing tool set, like a gadget, and use that in choreographed dancing, rhythm, and so forth. And he is trying to mix young children with the seniors that can play yo-yo ball together and so forth. And I think that's a interesting idea that I am currently engaged in helping through what you mentioned, kimono project, repurposed kimono being made into beanbag with a rubber band, and we can make it together and play together and so forth. So creating an opportunity to spend time together, intergenerationally, get to know, and sometimes it could be intercultural, different group of students from the United States coming to rural communities, mingling with people without words, yet sharing experience of fun activities. It has a lot of positive impact that I discovered. So I continue to create some program, hopefully post-COVID, when Japan can welcome other people to come more easily. I like to resume that kind of activities.
Thank you very much, Fumiko.
You're welcome.
Our next speaker will stay in the Far East there from Korea, Dr. Jin Shin. You've heard his bio. Welcome, Dr. Shin.
Thank you very much. It's my honor to present my ideas in your YILAGA International Conference. Problems of aging, and I'd like to expect my ideas about the prospect of the future of society. In some countries, the problems of aging undermines the country's sustainable growth and seriously affect the country's survival. Up to now, we have only thought of aging as a burden on society, but we must find another way to view aging as a start of a new development through a change of our thinking. And also, one of the problems caused by aging is an increase in social burden. Overtaking the elderly population increases the numbers that society has to pay for the welfare insurance. Also, an increase in the population of elderly society means that the fewer people have to support more. If this phenomenon expands, it is particularly impossible to support the elderly population economically. It doesn't matter when 8 to 9 people in a population of 10 support the 1 or 2 people. It's fine. However, when the aging rate reaches 30% to 4%, it becomes a serious social problem. That is, 6 people have to bear the population of 4 people. Such a society cannot realistically bear the elderly population. So, and also, the second problem that aging causes is that progressiveness and vitality of society generally deteriorate. Aging means to retire, and the population stops productive activities and concentrate on the hobbies, and healthcare increases. The vitality and energy of society decrease. Also, thirdly, on the personal level, how miserable it would be if a human being did not participate in any productive activities just because he was old and he just waited for the day he would die. So, in order to solve this social problem, the urgent steps to be taken as following. Number one, each country's society should stop forcing its citizens to retire according to their ages. The age-based retirement system was established a long time ago, before the society developed as it is today. In addition, developed countries are abolish all kinds of some discrimination. Developed countries oppose all kinds of some discriminations, including sexes and races and class discrimination. In that case, it can be also said that forcing the retirement age based on age is also on other discriminatory treatment based on age. So the world and international organizations such as the UN or international institutions like some illegal or something should ban countries from forcing mandatory retirement based on ages. As a way international organization, UN and many things has to promote those campaigns. This is because mandatory retirement based on age is the same level of discrimination as human rights abuses. Man has worked hard until today, but his age has expired, so he will receive some dismissal notice telling him not to come to work from tomorrow. And the reason is not because of their lack of some ability, but only because of their old age. This is an oppression of a human right also. The international community should work together to eliminate this mandatory retirement system also. And also, as we get older, various changes occur in our psychological aspect, the physical activity decreases, or dual activity decreases, the various functions of our body weakens. In particular, the elderly do not recognize the small object, small characters way, and the lack of some physical activities. The computer abilities to use is and that abilities is so reduced. It's true that daily productivity of the elderly decreased compared to the young people. But the older you get, the better you do. You learn how to live life in this world in harmony and not through struggle. They also tend to live a life of service for others rather than pursuing their own interest through conflict with others. As these values spreading among the elderly, conflicts decrease in society and peaceful, harmonious and happy life increases. Therefore, an increase in the elderly population means that the society becomes more peaceful society. The future society should lead the elderly to productive industrial sites by providing them with jobs that they can do very well. Although the physical function of the elderly decreases, their wisdom, their character, their dignity are excellent. And their wisdom in solving social problems is also excellent. Therefore, a desirable society must find a way to utilize the wisdom of the elderly. If the elderly's ability to use computers decrease, it is enough to create a new program that can operate computers using their own languages, not by their typings. In other words, if the typing speed of elderly is slow, when a computer user speaks using their voice recognition technology, software that record the user's word as text has already been activated. Therefore, the productivity of the elderly should not be overestimated based on past scale. Rather, the future society should develop their software so that the elderly can demonstrate that their abilities and develop methods to increase the productivity of elderly. The elderly must maintain the same vitality as young people in their mental aspect. So older people perceive themselves to be old people, which make them retires. And elderly should also actively participate in all social activities and contribute to social development. God made us live in this world for a short time, and since we take care of God's properties, we have the mental will to take care of them, God's properties, the world, and then we return it to our descendant and God until the day we die. It is very important, I think. And in conclusion, the problem of the aging should not be rushed to passively preparing countermeasures. Rather, efforts should be made to make society a more vibrant society by more actively taking advantage of the problem of aging. So older people should not be discriminated against. It's the same reason we shouldn't discriminate against people with disabilities. Even if the physical activities of the elderly is weaker than that of some young, the wisdom they possess as an elderly and the disposition of the harmonized society are the same as the God's will to send people to be there. Therefore, the future society should develop the plan to utilize the ability of the elderly and utilize the elderly manpower. Even the elderly themselves should make an active effort to contribute to the world until the day they die. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Shin. Very insightful. Next, we'll stay in Asia and hear from a country very challenged, I think, with aging population, the Republic of China. Let's hear from Yeching Li. Yeching, okay.
Thank you, John. And thanks to the organizers of this important conference. And I'm very happy to see Dr. Rai and Dr. Shin and Fumiko. Dr. Rai, actually, I really missed the experience in India. I remember we bathed in the Ganges River together. So, and I'm looking forward to going back to India, hopefully early next year. And as John said, China is facing a very dramatic challenges of the aging population. And due to the sharp increase of life expectancy and decrease of fertility rate. So from 1950, the life expectancy is like 43 years old, and now it's 77. So almost double. And then, but the fertility rate is from like 5.6 in 1950 to nowadays 1.3, even lower than Japan. So the situation actually is getting very severe, and then the retired population from the 1980s, the 7.5% to nowadays like about 18%. However, in about 10 years, there goes to 30%, and even later it got almost 40%. So that's caused a severe kind of challenge. It's never experienced in the Chinese history and probably in the world history. So how to handle this kind of challenge? That's really something the whole world we may need to work together to face this. And then there are many serious consequences from economic issue, social issue, and then health issue, all those things that we need to handle. And for example, actually for the one serious situation, the gender imbalance, right? So the ratio of boy to girls at the birth is now like 111. So have a lot more boys than girls. People are talking about this by soon will be like more than 240 million less women than men by the 2050. So that's a huge issue also. And then among many of those challenges or phenomena, there's one thing that I want to talk about a little bit is also wants to link to the peace which John asked me to link the aging and peace agenda, is actually immigration. China, actually, for the last a few decades, basically is a country of sending out emigrate out to the world. But I think from now on, and China will face the situation, maybe have to have immigrants, and because the one-child policy, the 4-to-1 problem, so it's really very difficult to sustain. And then the country will change its policy to welcome immigrants. I think this is already in Japan and Korea, even those a very homogeneous country, they already made policy changes. And China, I think, will go to the same kind of way. And then, but however, there'll be this immigration issue also will cause potential conflict, right? So from ethnical, ideological, or religious, all kinds of differences could cause conflict. And then how to deal with this. So this is something we have no choice. We have to face and have to deal with. However, I think we do have something we can go beyond the barriers of those differences, the higher level of beliefs, and even I think in China, from the history side, we do have a long-term kind of belief. There's an expression called 天下一家. It's like one family out of heaven, so people can be considered as one family regardless the differences. Actually, in the history, even the ideological side or belief side, the different religions can coexist relatively peacefully, and even actually with a individual, same person, they can share, have those different beliefs together, like the Confucianism, Taoism, and even Buddhism, which is from India, and thanks to the India's contribution to China's culture. And so I think that there's a good historical tradition to bring differences together. I think also even in India, you have those Vasudeva Kutumbakam, those expression. I think that's very similar, right? And then also the United States has this one nation under God idea. That's actually United States is probably the strongest example of the whole world living in this one country together. Essentially, it's a country of immigrants in addition to the Native Americans, as John mentioned before. So America, I think, shows some good examples, and so based on some common belief, which is beyond religion, right? From stated in the Declaration of Independence, all men are created equal with certain unalienable rights, right? So I think those three countries, I think, have a good chance now, can actually work together to face a common challenge. And if those three countries work together, also Korea too. Korea, there's an expression of Hoin Yingan, living for the greater benefit of all humanity. So we are actually we have some all universal kind of belief which can go beyond the differences. So I think this is a time we have no choice. I think we have to face it, and we have to find a solution. So I think this is great. John actually bring those countries together, including Japan. Actually, my wife is from Japan, and so even with my own family, I think it already shows some kind of example. I'm Chinese. My wife is Japanese, and my son is American, and we have one family with three nationalities. And then we have to live together to find some common things, can bring people together. So I think this is the time, really, this conference bring us together. I think we can really work together, find good solutions to deal with this challenge. Thank you, John, and thanks to the organizers of this conference.
Thank you, Yeching, and thanks for bringing up that family word. That's very, very important. To make strong, resilient communities, we really have to strengthen families, I believe. So thank you. And this is here today is Dr. Sally's family. I think it's a really great example. And finally, then we will come to India. Dr. Rai has worked for the UN for decades, and I've met him in many countries around the world. He was based in the Nairobi headquarters of UN Habitat, so he knows Africa very well. We haven't had an Africa representative today, I don't think. But I also have met him in New York and walked through the UN with him a few times, and I was amazed at his foundation there and impact there. And I mean, he knew everybody, and everybody's very, very nice to Dr. Rai. So it was really good to be with him there. And I've always enjoyed being with him wherever we were. He's a great representative and ambassador for India. So we'll have our final speaker from our panel today, Dr. Markandeep Rai.
Thank you, John. I'm alive and waiting only because of you, a friend like you and Yeching Lee and others. The topic is very familiar to us. It is our story, and we are telling our story rather than telling the story of others. We have already crossed, John, 60 plus. We have gone to 70 now. So we are in the same boat when we are talking about independent living and graceful aging. I thank to Sally George or Dr. Sal Chaco for giving this opportunity to all of us to speak about all of us. It is our story, how to have independent living and graceful aging. And I think it is supporting the goal 3 and goal 4. I think more topical is about goal 4, quality education. Most of the speakers from the beginning, from Bikram Dutt to you can say Jane Barrett and Amal Abor, everybody talked about education. All the things, whatever theory, human rights, this and that, is not working in the society. We are getting worse and worse. You can imagine that 1 billion population are over age 60 in low and middle income countries. They are living in shock, emotional shock. We can't tell them about legal rights and the law and the conferences and awareness, this, that. It is most important what Yeching Lee has mentioned now, that families are breaking, emotional connections are no more, and moreover, old persons are living alone. They are waiting for final permit to go up. And I remember that Miss Miko from Japan, she mentioned how lonely people are. How lonely people are feeling in those cities, a developed country like Japan, Korea, and other places. So most important thing is that Shali's question was that is it enough to sustain and care for increasing aging population? No. I'm saying no. Rules, policy, and aging conferences will not help unless we have education of the young people to take care of their parents. I am thinking that my story is the story of many other people who are in urban area, living alone, sometime with a partner or one person is gone and you are living alone. Very rarely you need emotional connection, emotional attachment and emotional support from the people. Otherwise, you are living in insecurity. Most of the people are living in security. Few years before in 1990s, when I was not knowing what is the old person home in developed world. One time I was in Geneva looking for a UNDP office and I landed in one of the old person's home. And I saw there how the old people are living. Now I'm seeing in India also, most of the cities, big cities, including Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, Chennai, Cochin, people have the old person's home where people are living alone. India is in a transitional phase. 60% population live in a rural area. Only 35 to 36% people live in urban area. So our responsibility is to eat well, do yoga, meditation, have good friends so that you can have a good life, decent life, and let the society do whatever they can do for us. But we should take responsibility of ourselves. Rather, we should go for quality education of the young people so that they should understand the human values, which was mentioned about Yeching just now, that we have to see that how we can promote the ideals of human values in our young generation so that they should take care of their brother, sister, parents, old parents and grandparents. That will help us, not the law and legal support. We don't want legal support. We want family support, society support, government support. In developed world, there are a lot of packages by the government, but in developing world, we are not even health insured. In India, very few people are health insured. Suppose somebody gets sick, they don't have money to go to the hospital. So they don't have funds to survive. They are living alone. So all this situation, I am saying that it is society's responsibility, it is our responsibility to educate our young generation, to inculcate the values in them so that they can take care of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Ryan. And moving forward, there's so much opportunity for collaboration here, and I'm very inspired by the program you've put together, Dr. Sally, and your team is fantastic. And all the presenters today, it was quite a blessing to be able to participate and be a part of this. And Dr. Rai told me you can't have a meeting without finishing with a resolution. Otherwise, you didn't have a meeting. So we'll work up a resolution and send over for future collaboration. Thanks so much, everybody. Thank you for putting this fantastic program together and for including dance and song and music, because that is celebrating and that we need to definitely do more of. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
To foster healthy aging and improve the lives of older people and their families and communities, fundamental shifts will be required not only in the actions we take, but in how we think about age and aging. This brings us to the end of day one of the YILAGA International Conference. Please tune in tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. to dive deeper into factors and environments that influence and enable graceful aging and healthy living. See you tomorrow. Thank you.